What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner Podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Pavin, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Tyler Old. Tyler is the creator of the brand The Five-Headed Lady, which is on a mission to bridge the gap between who society leads us to think we are versus who we truly are. She's currently in pursuit of discovering both her purpose in life and what that looks like. Tyler was such a blast to talk to, and despite the huge time difference between me and Australia and getting up at 5 a.m. to record, I had a great time. So thank you so much, Tyler, for coming on and sharing your story with everyone. Now, before we get into the episode, guys, you know the drill. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. Three, two, one. We are live. Tyler, what's going on? Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Of course. So before we get into anything, I wanted to ask you kind of the broadest question ever. Where does your where does like your whole story start? Like this whole journey that you've been on the past couple years?
Probably when I was younger, I would say maybe around like 13, maybe a bit younger than that. Yeah. I guess like from birth, you could say, but you don't really realize a lot of those things until you get to a certain age. So I'd probably say around my teen years is when I really started to come into a lot of things in my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like what?
Like just understanding like kind of like who I wanted to be, even though that changes as time goes on, but sort of that, as well as like what direction I wanted to go in, what I kind of wanted to do. And I think when you're younger, I guess it's more pure when you're younger because you're not really constructed by a lot of things, and you're not kind of directed in a certain way. So when you're younger, you just have more clarity around like what you wanted to do with your life. Like obviously when you're young, you're like, I want to be a cop and I want to be a doctor and I want to be an astronaut and stuff like that, which is totally doable. But like as time goes on, you realize that's probably not what I want to do. And then you kind of get more of a clearer understanding of what direction you want to go in. And then as time goes on, life hits you, society hits you, your parents, your family, your friends, all that kind of stuff starts to construct this idea of who you are or who you should be or where you should go. But I think I always kept that kind of idea when I was like, around 13 and started to really figure out like what I wanted to do or understand more about what I wanted to do. I kind of held on to that, and I've sort of held on to that throughout my whole entire journey, which I think has been super beneficial for me, to bring me to where I am now and kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, it's interesting how you can take a child who's like super innocent and like, I want to change the world. And then, you get an update on them like 10 years later and something has just completely ruined their innocence.
Yeah. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Or like someone's like, no, you can't do that. And it's like, but why? Like, who says, Yeah, it's a really strange way of growing up, I guess, but we all are in it, but we just don't really consciously think about it. Yeah,
it's interesting. So for you, when you were like 13 and you wanted to hold on to that, like I'm gonna do this, like what was kind of the reception around you? Because usually like we conform into what we think should happen. Like I applied for university when I was in high school. I applied to be a vet because I thought that's what people wanted of me, as opposed to what I wanted. So when you were at 13 and you're like, I'm going to do this, like what was the reception between friends, family? What were they kind of feeling about it?
I think kind of around that age, or when I started to realize it, they were kind of just like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, they didn't really think it was like serious. And as time's gone on, like when I've said that I wanted to do things, they've always been really, what's the word? like kind of push backy. That's not the word, but they try and push me back. Like, why are you doing that? Are you sure you want to do that? Like, is that really the direction you want to go in? And I'm just like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Whereas now they're kind of like, oh, that's just you. Like, they kind of just let me do my thing. And I'm just like, oh, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, love that for you, support you. But yeah, I think back then, like, no one really thought that the direction that I wanted to go in was the direction that I wanted to go in. And I think back then as well, I didn't really have the confidence to pursue it either. I was kind of like, you know what, maybe I should just get a job. Like, I'll build my ranks up in the corporate world, become a CEO or something. Obviously, they wanted me to go to uni. I was the first of my family to go to university. So that was a big deal. I'm also the firstborn, so pressure. But yeah, when I went to uni, I always knew that I would be in some form, like in business or do my own sort of thing or be on television or entertainment, that kind of space. Like, I've always known that. But they obviously wanted me to go to uni, and I was like, oh, that's probably the right thing to do, like go to uni. So I did go to uni to study television and film, but then I was only there for 6 months. And then I went to another university to try and study the same thing, but the course was different. So it wasn't really the direction. Like, if I had stayed in my old course, it would have been way better, but I went on a different direction and then I never used the bloody thing. So it kind of just sits there. But yeah, I still went to uni and still did what I wanted to do, but it just took me in a different kind of pathway. Like, when I'm looking now at what I want to do, which is television and film and have my own businesses, I don't think it's the traditional way, for lack of a better word. Like, I don't think it's like you go to uni, you get work experience, learn all your stuff there, and then there you go. Like, you go create your own thing. I think mine's more just like jumping into it and just trying a bunch of things and seeing how it goes, which I've been doing. So it's going all right so far.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how's it going?
I'm not where I want to be, obviously, but I think I had to go through a lot of things throughout my life and my journey before really getting a clear direction or foundation on where to go next. Because I think there were just a lot of things that I hadn't worked on, like personally, like inside, that are going to be really beneficial for me moving forward into this next phase and really pursuing what I want to do. So yeah, it's going, but it's only one person and I'm doing a lot of things. And I also work full time. So it's hard to like kind of juggle. And I dance and all this other stuff, but it's getting there, just a slow process. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the fun is the journey, right? Is that what they say?
Yes.
Is that the quote?
What is it? It's not the destination, it's the journey or something. I don't know. That used to be my life quote, actually.
Really? Well, yeah, you should know that. Come on, Tyler. God.
I know. Yeah, it used to be my life quote. I don't know why, but
what I love about like the story that you're sharing right now is that a lot of, well, I'm kind of in it right now and a lot of my friends are, but you get out of university and your expectation is you go right into that field of work that you've been studying for, or you go right into whatever you think is the right thing. And there's like a bunch of like anxiety that comes with that and like uncertainty that comes with that, because like you said, a lot of us haven't done any self-work. Like I only started doing real self-work like in my last year of university, but I know a lot of people who haven't yet and we're like mid-20s, and it's like
some people don't.
Some people
either.
don't, yeah.
Like, and they leave the surf without it. Yeah.
It's scary almost, like to just go from, and like if you know who you are and you're doing it, then that's different. But like there's a lot of people who go from high school to university to the workforce without ever knowing who they are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why I'm creating what I'm creating. Because I see it's so prevalent in so many people, and I see so much potential, but they're just not like taking that step for some reason. I don't know if they're scared or they've just got so many people in their ear or whatever. But I really want to help those people like kind of break that wall or barrier and just go for it and like start really understanding like who you are outside of society, outside of the constructions, outside of your job title, and all that kind of stuff. And like I asked people, you know, if you could do anything, like what would you have done? Or if you were young, you know, when you were younger, like what did you want to do? What was your dream? And some people, you know, say things that I guess I would deem as normal, like really attainable. And I'm just like, why didn't you do it? And they're like, no, it's too, you know, it's the time's gone now. Like, I can't do it now. And I'm like, there are literally people in their 80s, like starting businesses. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have so much time in the world. There is literally nothing that you can't do. You're just letting all these outside influences tell you that you can't. But that's because they can't, because not that they can't, they just won't do it. And they're just projecting that on you. So I think, yeah, people really need to just stop listening to the outside world and just start listening to the inside, because that's where it starts. But too many people are so focused on outside. I was actually talking to a friend about it. He'd mentioned it and he was like, it's funny how so many people are always, you know, trying to make sure their hair's good, their makeup's done, lashes, like nails, this and that, but they don't really think about what goes inside their body or what is inside. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what society has taught us. Like, you see all the advertisements and stuff, like, make sure your skin's perfect and this and that. It's never about, you know, fueling your body with good stuff or doing the inner work. Yeah.
That's a big reoccurring theme on this show and on pretty much every show, is that, you know, people focus way too much on external.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me personally, I actually, because, okay, I'm not going to trash swimming. I love swimming, but it was toxic in the sense that you're in a Speedo all day, or not all day, but like for 4 hours a day. So
Is that not liberating for a male? Is that not liberating a little
bit? maybe if you're not, like, I was always the bigger guy. Like, I wasn't like,
right, sure.
I was never
yeah,
fat,
okay.
but like my body type wasn't quote unquote swimmer body.
The type.
Whatever,
Yeah.
like the Baywatch, whatever the hell. And like with that comes a lot of body dysmorphia, but you know, I was always hating how I looked and I always had to be more fit. And there was like one summer where I just like, I was not taking care of myself. Like, I was basically starving, but I looked great. And so I was like, oh, I feel like I'm the best. I'm the best I've ever felt, blah, blah, blah. But I really wasn't. It was just visually I was. And so it took a lot of time to get out of that. If you look good, you feel good kind of mentality. And now it's like, as long as I feel good, like, I'm not perfect. I still don't look in a mirror and go, you're hot as fuck. You know what I mean?
You have
But
your
like,
days though, you know?
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
You do have your days. But like, it's a lot different now for me in terms of like, I just want to feel healthy. I don't really care about what people look at.
Yeah. And that projects outside then, because I'm the same. Like, I would get my lashes done, my nails done, like all that kind of stuff. I still tan sometimes when I'm not in the sun because I'm a ghost. But like, now I don't do any of that stuff just because I wanted to try and work on loving myself exactly how I am. Like, yeah, I still done my hair and stuff, but like, whatever, you know, you do your things. But like, for those things, I just wanted to try and love myself exactly like how I was, you know? Because I don't know, like all that stuff, like, one, it costs money. It's just expensive. Like,
Right.
And two, it's just not you. Like, it just didn't feel right doing it. Like, as I've gotten older, it just didn't feel natural to me to have all of that stuff. And some days I'm still like, oh my God, girl, like, what are you doing? And then other days I'm like, yes. It really depends, but that's completely normal. Like, you're not always going to stand there and be like, you are like, you're perfect all the time. It's normal for humans to go through like those kind of emotions and stuff like that. But also remember that you're just having a day. Like, you're not a terrible person and you don't look crap, you know?
Yeah, it comes in waves, and it's interesting when you're in that moment of you look like crap. It feels like you've felt that way forever. You forget about those days where you're like, I feel pretty good right now.
Right?
Man.
Yeah, I agree. I had like moments when I was going through, I don't know if like you've said you've been doing your inner work, but there was like a point where I went through what they call the dark night of the soul, or like a spiritual awakening, I guess, if you're kind of spiritual. And those waves were insane, like with emotions and stuff. Like I would feel like crap. Well, it would feel like I would feel like crap for so long, but it would only be a short period. And then I'd be like super happy. It's just, I don't know, it was just weird. Like it felt like I was sad like the whole time, but I wasn't. But it was just like this pit of like doom for like years. But it wasn't like that at all, but it felt like that.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to get into that actually, the spiritual awakening, because you've mentioned that it was on your matchmaker profile. I think I saw a couple videos of yours on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
When you were going through this, like what prompted you to get into a spiritual awakening? What made you decide, okay, I should do this right now?
It wasn't really a choice. I was kind of thrown into it.
Mm.
Um, and I didn't realize that it was what it was until I had a period where I thought I was depressed. Again, I've been depressed before, but it was a different feeling. Like I can't explain it unless you've been in it. But it was like you were at rock bottom or like in a pit of like bad emotion, sort of like depression, but it wasn't depression. It's so hard to explain, but I just knew it wasn't. And that's when I realized and kind of started to look more into it. Like, why was I feeling all these emotions all the time? I always felt quite down, even though I wasn't. I felt it inside and like just all this stuff. But it pretty much started, I worked out from the moment that I separated from my ex-partner. Because for me, relationships is like a big relationship slash love is like something that I struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like dates back to childhood sort of stuff. But that's when it kind of started. And then I didn't realize that until after I went to Thailand, ended up in India, and then came back to Australia. And then I was sort of sitting there and I was like, why am I doing, like, why are all these things happening? It was kind of bringing up patterns from like back in my past, like back in high school and stuff. Like it was bringing all this stuff back to the surface that I thought I had kind of like buried or healed or worked through. And it was just bringing pretty much everything back to the surface and just throwing it in my face. So I had to kind of deal with it.
Mm.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I chose. It was literally something that I was thrown into and I just had to figure it out.
And all of those thoughts and stuff, they came back from your traveling. Is that what prompted all of those things to come back up?
I think so, yeah, because I love traveling. And I think that's because that's where I learned a lot about myself, like as a person, because actually not a lot of times I went by myself, but I just had it was like I was around people, but I was still alone. And so I had all that time to kind of, and I wasn't working and stuff. So I didn't have all these distractions outside of me to make me not think about stuff. It was literally just me traveling, experiencing different things, seeing how I would be in certain situations. When I moved to Thailand, like that was a whole other kind of world. And then I ended up in India somehow. So like all these things, I was kind of just throwing myself into them. And then certain things would come up. Like for example, when I moved to Thailand, I went to a fashion show because my friend was modeling in there. And that's sort of why I went as well, like for career opportunities and stuff. But I was sitting there I met this chick there and I was telling her like what I'd done, like quit my job just randomly, sold all my stuff, packed up my bags and moved to Thailand. And she just sat there and was like, it sounds like you're running away. And I was
Mm.
like, no. Like at first I was like, no, it's not. Like I kind of got a bit defensive. But then then she like kind of left and started dancing and stuff. And then I was kind of sitting there thinking about it. And I was like, she's actually probably not wrong. But then I was still trying to like defend it and be like, no, that's not the reason. I'm just living my life. But like things like that started to come up when I was traveling. And then I just had to work through them because there was nothing else I could do because it was just sitting in my brain and I had no other distractions really to keep me from not working through those things. Yeah, it was a very
Mm.
interesting time.
Mm. And when you started traveling, I'm kind of going backwards here, but when you started
That's right.
traveling, how did it feel? Because it didn't feel like you were running away. Was it,
Mm-mm.
but was it like an impulse kind of, I'm going
Mm.
to Thailand?
Yeah, it was an impulse. I got to a point where I just didn't want to be at work. Like, I don't want to work for somebody. Like, I know, like, I'm the type that I want to build my own thing. And I've just known that since I was younger. And I think it was just getting to that point where I was like not enjoying what I was doing, and it didn't matter what I was doing because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. It just got to a point like mentally where I was just like, I'm over this. And then I was dealing with stuff like with my past relationships still, and like all those emotions and trying to figure out stuff there. And I think because there was just so much happening, I just wanted to get away, but I didn't think of it like that. I was just like, I just want to go, be happy somewhere else, you know, enjoy something that's different to this, just get away from like all the memories, all the people, everything that's kind of happening here, and kind of, yeah, just be away from it. That's, yeah, that's kind of how that happened. I was going to say something, but now I've forgotten.
That's okay. I do that
I had my
literally
moment.
all the time. I do that all the time. Oh, I
I
mean,
think
you
it's
just
old
saw it.
age, because I never used to be like that.
Old age, yeah, I can't say that, but every time I say that, like my back will hurt or something. I'm like, oh, I'm so
Yeah,
old. My parents are like, what the fuck? Like,
you're
you don't
not
even,
old. Shut up. And
yeah,
I'm
you don't
like,
get it.
yeah,
It's like, well, I feel old, so,
yeah,
um,
literally.
so, you come back. First of all, you end up in India somehow. Like, did you just wake up and you were in India? Like, how does that even work? That's a whole different country.
Yes, I know. And India, if you haven't been, is a whole other world too. Like,
Mm,
I've traveled to a lot of countries, but India was just something else. So I, yeah, had moved to Thailand, and I went to Thailand solo, but I had my friend there, and I don't know, like I just didn't feel like I should be there. And so I was kind of, and I knew I had to work through things in my head as well. So I was going to do a meditation retreat. I don't know if you have them over there, but like
mm,
Vipassana and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, so you just give a donation. You go there 10 days, you don't talk pretty much, and you meditate the whole time and all this kind of stuff. So I thought maybe that's what I needed or should do. And I also thought it would be a cool experience and to do it in India. And so I was sitting there. I was just in my hostel, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna have a look. Why not? Like, I've been to Thailand before. India's right there. Let's just try it out. Yeah, so I was just looking into that, and I said, if I get in, I'll go. That'll be my sign, right, from the universe.
mm,
And so yeah, I signed up, got approved. But funny enough, the day, it was like 2 or 3 days before Vipassana. And so I had to literally, because you have to get a visa to get into India. And usually a visa takes like 5 to 7 days. And I was like, oh my God. So I literally had to do like an emergency visa. And I was like, okay, if I get this, then it's so meant to be. Literally got it the day before, like the night before. And then I booked my flight and then ended up in India. Luckily enough, I had a friend in India traveling at the time, who was also of Indian background and is also male, which helps in India, I will tell you.
right.
So he was there and we caught up, and he wanted to do the same thing. So then we were going to go together. Ended up going to India, only stayed for a couple of days. And then for some reason, I don't know why, but I just decided not to go to Vipassana. I don't think I was ready at that time. I think like I had so much in my head. I was just like, I don't think I can sit there for 10 days trying to figure all this stuff out, because I'll just be crying the whole time. So I was like, no.
Right.
So I ended up pulling myself out of that. He ended up going. And then I ended up going back to Thailand, because after going to India, I did not want to stay by myself. FYI, females, be very careful when you go to India by yourself. Beautiful country. Like, I loved it. It's so different. But as a female, it was pretty freaky.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, ended up back in Thailand. And then stuff happened, like financially, as well as I had stuff happening here in Brisbane. And then I had to come back to Australia. So,
Damn.
yeah, that was that.
And that's all in the span of how many months, days, weeks?
2 months,
2 months?
3 months.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
traveling.
Yeah. I loved it. It was so good, but long term, I think I would have gotten over it a bit. And I think the reason I had to come back to Australia, besides the stuff that was happening here, was because I needed to face everything here.
Right.
And I think it was inevitable. And so things just brought me back here, and I was like, fine, and
You're
came
like,
back.
fine, I'll do it
Yeah,
this time.
whatever.
God.
Yeah.
So when you came back, and then we've
Mm.
kind of gone full circle. When you were experiencing that inevitable spiritual awakening, like when did you realize like this wasn't depression, or this wasn't what I'm used to? This is something different. Like what
Yeah.
kind of gave that away?
Um, I think when I was in depression, like I just wasn't clear on a lot of things. Like I didn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. But when I was in the like spiritual awakening, I think I also researched it. So I was watching YouTube or something, and then this video came up and it said Dark Night of the Soul, and I was like, and so I clicked it, and I was like, I wonder what this is. And then when he started explaining what the Dark Night of the Soul was, everything matched up. Like
Mm.
everything that I felt, every kind of stage that I'd gone through, just made sense. And then that's when I realized that was exactly what I was going through. And when I was depressed, I was suicidal as well. And I didn't have those thoughts when I was going through my spiritual awakening. So it was just a different feeling. Like when you're depressed, you kind of feel helpless. Like you don't really know. I don't know if you've been depressed before, but when I was depressed, like I just didn't know where to go or what to do, or like why I was thinking this the way that I was thinking or feeling. And then I was obviously suicidal. But this time I wasn't suicidal. Thoughts were a bit more clearer, but I still didn't understand the links until I saw that video, and it explained literally everything. And it made sense as to why everything was happening exactly how it was happening. And then I was like, oh, okay, that's what's happening.
Mm.
Yeah.
What is the Dark Night of the Soul? I don't know what that is.
So the Dark Night of the Soul is pretty much, there's stages. I can't remember the stages. You guys will have to search it, but it's pretty much throwing everything, like all the patterns, all these things that you need to work on, like literally just throwing it at you, like in your face, all at once. It pretty much strips everything from you, like in terms of like how you see yourself, what you thought you were, pretty much everything that you're not. Like it starts to bring all those things to the surface and starts to get you to strip them away. And then, yeah, once again, what I said just throws all the lessons, toxic traits, like things you need to work on, things you've been avoiding, and just throws them at you. And then it goes to a period once you do all that work where you start to have a relaxing period. So things in your life, won't be so up and down and won't be coming at you. Like you'll just have a period of like kind of serenity, but not, because you're sort of like, I'm bored, what's going on?
Mm.
And then from there, that's when it goes up. So you have to look into it a little bit more, but pretty much it's just taking everything that you're not, stripping you of literally everything, and then getting you to start again. But exactly like authentically how you are, if that makes sense.
Right. It's
Yeah.
almost like it's almost like a meditation you never asked for.
Yeah. And there's no timeline to it. Like everyone is different. Mine was probably 4 years. Like I'm now at the top of it, thank God.
Mm.
Mine took about 4 years. Some take longer. It really depends on your journey. But yeah, that's pretty much what that is. So if you're going through something and you don't know what it is, maybe you should check that out.
4 years.
Might make sense.
That seems so in these 4 years that you've experienced,
Mm-hmm.
like when you were at a super low point,
Yeah.
like where it just like what does sorry I need I don't like what does the super low point of like a this period, what does it feel like? Because you said it wasn't
Yeah.
depression and
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have suicidal ideation or anything like that. What was the feeling?
Um, just like sadness, but not not like in a deep pit kind of way. Like when I was depressed, it felt like I just had this like deep pit of sadness like all the time. Um, but it didn't feel like you were just sad all the time, but it wasn't like that, like really deep. And it was kind of like surface level, if that makes sense. And then you like had waves, or like I felt like I cried like literally every single day for 4 years, not 4 years, but like a couple years. But just like waves of emotion, like throughout the whole time. And like it'll be in bursts. Like, for example, I'd be extremely sad and then I'll be really happy and then I'll be frustrated and then something else will happen. And I'm just like, why are all these emotions coming up all at once? Like, it makes no sense. Whereas like depression, or for me, I was just sad, like a deep pit of sadness all the time. And then with dark night of the soul or spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, you just feel like lost. You don't know who you are, like, because it's like everything that you thought you were or wanted to do or was right, is not who you are, and isn't what you want to do. And you just kind of feel like this thing in a world that you just don't, it, like nothing makes sense to you. I don't know, it's really hard to explain. Sorry, there's a bug and it's annoying me. But yeah, I just felt like I just didn't, like everything had just gone, like everything, I was just kind of floating because I didn't know who I was, what I was doing, what made sense, why things were happening. Like I just had questions. It was kind of like I was just a body without a soul, if that makes sense. But my soul was there. It was just waiting for me to like figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you operate during those 4 years feeling like that?
Um, I don't know the answer to that question. I think I'm just very resilient as a person. And I knew, because I've been through a lot of stuff prior to that already, which were quite negative or quite hard to like go through. I think I was already equipped for it in a sense. And because I'd been depressed and stuff before, so I sort of knew that there was going to be an end point, or there would be a tunnel. And for me, I think again, it was like holding on to that idea of like who I wanted to be or what I wanted to create, and knowing that that will happen, but just having to get through this and understanding that it was for a purpose. Like it's not happening just because I'm a bad person or anything like that. It was because I needed to work on these things. And I think as I got more down the track, I started to understand that I had to fix these, or not fix these things, but work on these things in order for me to create what I want to create. Because like once I get to the point that I want to get at, like I know there's going to be so much stuff thrown at me, like more so than probably what I've already experienced. So I think just kind of having faith in that and having faith in myself that I would just get through it eventually. Yeah.
That's also a great like tool for people who are experiencing like maybe not the same thing, but like depression in general, like because when you're in it, and you know I've been in it, you said you've been in it, like you feel like it's gonna, that's just how it is forever, you know, like
Yeah.
the whole low
100%.
point, you wake up, you're like, fuck, I woke up, like I didn't just sleep forever, like that, you think that's gonna last forever.
Yeah.
Man.
But it doesn't. But you don't, yeah, you just, it's so weird when I look back at that time, because I was just so in my head, and I'm like so glad that I didn't do anything, like so glad, even though life has been really hard at times, so glad that I didn't, because the outcome of it was just so much better. But I can totally understand why people would be in that position and think that, but it's, you know, because you want the emotions and the thoughts and the pain to stop, but that's not the way to do it, even though it feels like the best way.
Yeah.
It gets better. I know it's so cliche to say, but it does eventually. Yeah.
Right. When you were in that, like, what worked for you, like coping wise, or like, not maybe not coping, but like what helped you get out of it, like the
Um,
depressive period.
it's funny you say that, because I didn't acknowledge that I was depressed for ages. And I actually used alcohol and drugs as a coping mechanism, but I didn't know that I was using it as a coping mechanism at the time. And it's not like I was like an addict or anything. Like I was definitely a party animal, 100%. Wasn't really into drugs until I moved to Australia, because it's really big here. But yeah, then I realized obviously that was a thing. But coping through it, I was somebody back then who always shielded my emotions. Like the only two emotions you would ever see would be happy, or three, I should say, would be happy, love, and anger. Like that was literally it. You would never see anything else. Like I would never cry or anything like that. Honestly, I think what got me through it was my sister, because I'm older, so I have a younger sister, and I didn't want her to grow up without me, and wonder like, sorry, I'm going to get emotional. Oh my God, let's calm down. But I think, yeah, I didn't want her to grow up and think like, why is my sister not here? Like she's not helping me through life, like da 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 da. And actually the night that I had the 100th bloody suicidal thought, I was going to actually pop pills that night and just hope something would happen. And then my friend messaged me randomly. Two of my friends, actually, they were two guys, and they just messaged me. And then for some reason I was just like, in my head I was just like, just tell them, or just say something to like prompt and just see, like, you know, if they would click on. And I think I said something like, oh, I don't want to be here anymore, haha, or something like that. And they took that seriously, because that's something that I would never say, even as a joke. And then my friend straight away called me. My other friend was like trying to call me, and I was like, I'm on the phone. And then he was like messaging me. He's like, don't you do anything, like blah, 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 like you're loved and all this kind of stuff. So coping wise, I wasn't the most conventional. Like drugs and alcohol was not the answer. I cried a lot as well, which helps. I didn't really cope with it very well until my friends reached out to me and picked up on that little cue that I was kind of giving them. And then thinking, I think my friend said something like, think about, you know, your family, like all of us, like we would miss you, blah, blah, blah. We love you, like all this kind of stuff. And then think about your sister, like, you know, and I think that's what hit me. I was like, yeah, I can't not be here for her. So, yeah.
Man, it's wild how like the brain convinces you that no one's gonna miss you, and like it just manifests it, and you're like you get convinced so easily that like if I was gone, no one would care.
You think you're a burden, but you're not a burden. Like people would rather you tell them so that they can help you than you deal with it yourself. Because I struggled to ask for help for ages. The first time I realized that I was depressed was I was on the train, and I was sitting there and I was going to work, and I literally just started this job, and I think it was my first or second shift. And I was literally on the train, and I was like, I wonder what would happen if I just jumped in front of the train. Like nobody would care, right? Like nobody would care. Like I was like having this argument with myself in my head, and I was like, of course they would. And then they were like, no. And then I started to, and that was also when I had my first anxiety attack. And then that's when I realized I have a problem, like something is not right. Yeah, that was the moment. But then that's what I kept trying to fight in my head, like, no, like people would like imagine like your grandmother would be upset, your mum would be upset, like rah, rah, rah. But your brain is it's really hard to get out of those thoughts. Like people don't understand depression because they're like, oh, I'm strong-minded. And I'm like, like that doesn't make you strong-minded that you haven't been depressed. Like,
no. And that whole idea is kind of, it's a big reason why people are scared to open up still, which is crazy.
I think being open with your emotions is stronger. Like if you're able to really accept that that's how you feel and voice that, I think that's like really powerful versus not saying anything at all. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, like that, it's a big reason why I never opened up when I was a kid. I was like, man, I don't want to be that guy, you know, the guy who can't open up about anything, or sorry, the guy who opens up about everything.
Everything. Yeah.
people who opened up were like looked at differently.
Mm. I don't
So
know where that stemmed from because I wasn't like taught the same, but I think because we weren't really vocal about our emotions and stuff, so I just naturally would just bottle it. So I was like, it's fine, like I'm good. Like let's just push everything in the bottle. Um, but that just makes things worse.
mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely does. When like when your friends, you know, reached out to you and
Mm.
you eventually got help, like what did that help kind of look like, and was it hard for you to get out of that depressive mindset and switch it?
I think for me, like I didn't seek therapy or anything at that time. I've never been on medication. I just don't, for me, like I don't think medication is helpful, but it might be for other people. Um, but I think once that happened, then I really felt that people, you know, cared about me and loved me. And so I was like, okay. And then I just sat there. I literally bawled my eyes out after they called. So I got all of that out. And then I just started to think like, what is it that I need to change in my life? Like, what is not working? And one, it was like people I was hanging around because they would do drugs and alcohol and all that kind of stuff, which wasn't me at all. I mean, partying was me back then, but not the alcohol, the drugs and stuff. But and so that, and I actually decided to move. So I ended up moving to Brisbane. I felt like I needed a bit more of like just a change of scenery. Wasn't running away that time. I just
Mm.
needed a change and kind of get away from that environment because I was just getting caught up in it and it wasn't good. Um, yeah, and then I think every day I just like kind of sat and worked through the thoughts in my head, the feelings. I also talked to people more, like when I was feeling some type of way, even if it was just so they could listen, I could just get it out. Not necessarily them having to give me advice or anything. And then just being around my friends more because when I moved to Sydney, I didn't have any friends that I had been friends with for a while. But when I moved to Brisbane, I had a few more friends who I had known since like high school or, you know, had just been in my life a lot longer. So they had seen my journey or seen my transition into the person that I was at that time and just knew me a bit more. So I think that really helped too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, environmental is a big factor
Oh, yeah. 100%.
with mindset. That's I mean, I can relate a little bit when I switched up, not well, yeah, I mean, most of the friends I was seeing, when I switched up that, when I switched up my routine, like my mindset shifted completely.
Mm, yeah. And I think people get like too caught up in like, oh, but I've been friends with this person for so long, or they've done this for me, or something, you know, so they feel kind of connected, or like they have to be friends or need to be friends with them. And it's just like, you don't owe anybody that. Like,
Mm,
if it's not doing you well, then you're like, you have every right, or you don't need like permission to move on or not hang out with that person. Doesn't mean you have to cut them off completely, but like, you know, if it's not working for you, you have every right to kind of distance yourself from that and not feel bad about it, even if you've known them since like birth or something.
yeah, no, exactly. And the same goes with family. I had a guest on, her name was Karen,
Mm,
and she was talking about like we should normalize like if a family member is toxic, like normalize not talking to them.
yeah,
Like if they're adding a negative influence in your life, but you're keeping them in because oh they're family, I have to love them.
yeah.
Well, can we move away from that narrative?
And you're probably doing more damage to them by accepting their behavior than like distancing yourself and them starting to see why are these people moving away from me? What's the problem kind of thing? You're kind of just enabling that more.
Right.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I what I love about what you like what we just talked about your experience with depression and everything
Mm.
is the power that this is gonna sound so corny, but
Do it.
the fuck. I'm so sorry to anyone listening, but the power that love has on
Oh,
like
100%. That's so
it's
corny, but it's so true. Like, come
so
on.
corny.
Everybody needs love, and everybody loves love. Like, even though you don't admit it, you all love love.
Doesn't even have to be like a big act of affection. It can just be like, reaching out to a friend, or um like just asking if you're okay, or just
Mm-hmm.
how's your day been. Like it can just be little things like that. Like people don't understand that, just because I'm going through something doesn't mean I need this huge big act of affection that might be overwhelming for you to give. It can just be like a reach out. I just want to
100%.
talk to you.
Yeah, for sure. Just checking in. Even like if you see a stranger like on the street and you just give them a smile, or I don't know, do something like just say hello, have a conversation or something. Like, you never know that you could like make their day. Like, I remember one time I was sitting at the laundromat and I was like doing my clothes because I didn't have a washing machine, it broke or something. And I was really sad, and I didn't, and usually I'm pretty good at masking it. I don't mask it now. I'm just like, I'm sad, you can see it. But I was really sad, and I was just sitting there. I think I was having an argument with my partner at the time. And this guy literally, now this is a bit, you don't have to go overboard like this, but this was really cute. So this guy literally walked past, and then he came back like 10 minutes later, and he had 2 bouquets of flowers. And he was like, here you go. And I was like, what? And he's like, these are for you.
Oh,
You look sad. And I was like, thanks. And I was like, oh my God, I was sad. Yeah. And he just gave me flowers like randomly. And I was like, well, what do I do? What do I do with this? Like, do I need to do something? Like, yeah, but it was really, really sweet. And I always remember that. And I always tell people about it, because I'm like, that's really nice. Like, you don't have to go out of your way to do that, obviously, but just something. Like, you never know how it could make somebody's day.
yeah. Man, yeah, I know. It doesn't take much. Now, you know, um, being where you are now, after your spiritual awakening, after all this traveling, after all this, like you've experienced the whole depression side, sorry, as well. Um, do you still get thoughts like that now, being where you are now, like in terms of like, oh, no one would care if I was gone? Like, do those ever reoccur?
No, never, which is the weirdest thing. And I was literally, well, it's not weird, it's normal, but like, because they were so frequent, like for so long, I thought that was normal. Um, but now I never think about that. And I was literally talking to my friend the other day about it. And I was just like, I literally, because I would cry like all the time. And I literally haven't cried or had like what we call a breakdown moment for months. Like, I can't even remember the last time that I had a breakdown moment, which was so normal for me back then. But yeah, I never have those thoughts. Like, yeah, I have my days where I'm like, might not feel so good or whatever, but I never get to a point where I'm like, I can't do this, I'm worthless, I don't want to be here, like nobody cares, this and that. And I really think it's because I've done so much inner work that all of that is kind of within myself now. Like, I don't, like, we need it from other people, but I don't expect it from other people. Like, it will naturally come from those who love you, like, regardless, but I just have it inside me. I don't seek that from anywhere else now. I'm just so content with where I'm at. I don't, ever think about that at all.
Damn. That I hope people listening who are dealing with it can hear that. Because that, like, we've already mentioned it, where like, you just don't think it's ever gonna get better.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially when you're in it.
Yeah. And I look back now and I'm just like, wow, like, I've been through some shit. And you just kind of not laugh at it, but laugh at it because you're just like, oh my God, like, you're at this point now and you're like, life's so good. Like, obviously I'm not where I want to be, and I'm not doing half the stuff I was doing back then, partly because of COVID, obviously. But yeah, like, I just look back and I'm like, I'm so glad I'm through that. I'm glad I went through that too. Like, even as dark as it was, like, I learned so much through that period. But it's just funny to me now to see how I was back then and where I'm at now. And I'm just like, wow, okay. Moving on. Yeah.
Moving on. Turn the page.
Yeah, let's
Turn
go.
the page. So throughout all of this, like, what's probably the biggest, what's the most, not the biggest, what's the most important thing that you've learned about life and then yourself
Ooh.
after experiencing everything?
Oh, that's a big question. I think with life, it might not be the biggest, but it's the one that I can think of right now, is that everything in your life is your choice. And I think people don't take accountability for that. Like, so much things that have happened to me, I always blamed a lot of other people. Like, some things are just so fucked up. Like, it should never happen to anybody. But and it wasn't like my choice to be in that situation, obviously. But I think how you respond to things, what you do with that, moving forward is all a choice. How your life is a choice. Whether you want to get out of something or out of a mindset or whichever is still your choice, even though you're in, like, for example, depression, which is so hard to get out of. But you have to, like, understand that you are in control of your mind, but your mind is taking control of you at that point. And so once you realize that, you're like, okay, how do I get out of this? And then obviously everyone's different on how they work through it. But yeah, I think with life, it was just everything is my choice. And people say, well, no, you know, I didn't choose to be in this situation, or I didn't choose to be poor. And it's like, you're in that environment, you were born into it, I get it, but it's your choice what you do from that point forward. And you might not have the same, like, abilities or networks or whichever like other people, but at the same time, like, you can still choose to try and get out of that situation, you know. So I think with life, it was just, you always have a choice, and how everything has turned out is your choice on how you've responded to situations and things. I think with me, what is the biggest thing that I've learned? I have to think about that one. Biggest thing I've learned about myself. That I'm amazing. No, jokes. Kidding.
Oh my God.
Just kidding. But also, you're amazing, everyone. With me, I don't know. That's a hard question. What have you learned about yourself? And then I'll think of mine.
Oh my God, she's hitting me back
I'm
with the
hitting
same
you back.
question.
You want to throw it at me? I'll throw
What?
it back at you.
I know I'm bad at that, asking questions when I don't really have the answers myself.
Same. Yeah.
What have I learned? I've learned that like, personally, I feel like I'm a lot more resilient than I give myself credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Because you go through all of this, you go through the suicidal ideation, you try to end your life, you hate yourself for a decade or two, and you hate how you look, and like, you convince yourself that you're done, and you're still here.
Yeah.
You know, like, throughout everything. Like I don't think, and like, this, some people might find this dark, but I don't really care. Like, if you had asked me like 4 years ago, I would be convinced that I would not be here right now.
Oh yeah,
Like,
100%. Yeah.
20, I'm 23 right now. At 19, I was convinced I was never going to see my 20th birthday. Like, there's no way.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think that's what I've learned most, is that, you know, I'm a lot more resilient than I give myself credit for, because something kept me here. And, you know, you can point to the therapy and the medication and friends and family, of course, but it all starts with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because when I was depressed, even though I was suicidal, I knew, I still knew. I don't know, but that just comes back to, like, holding on to that 13-year-old who knew what she wanted to do, kind of thing. So I think that's why I was like, I know that I'm here to, like, do something big, and I know I'm here to create something, and rah, which is weird, because when you're in that state, you're just like, that's not happening. But I still deep down knew that. But I think now that you've mentioned that, the thing that I've learned, like, the biggest thing that I've learned about myself, and people might take this the wrong way, but that I'm always right when it comes to myself, in terms of, like, how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what I want to do, like, what I choose to do, you know, with certain things. Because I think a lot of times we always try and seek outside advice or outside opinions or outside direction in some way. And then we think if we don't do it that certain way or don't do what somebody else says, that we're wrong. But you're not wrong when it comes to you. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense to me. So so I get it. But yeah.
No, yeah, that makes sense. You're basically saying, like, you know your body best, you know who you are.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, like I think it's important sometimes to get external opinions
sure.
in this case of, like, I don't know, physical injury or whatever.
Yeah.
But like no one else knows what's going on in your head. So like yeah, no one else really knows. Like, people can have an idea, but you can't always accept that outer judgment.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you open up about things and people go, "Oh, you're just being over dramatic." Well,
I hate that.
you don't really know.
Yeah. It's
what's
not
going
over
on up there,
dramatic.
so.
It's called emotion or a boundary that I'm setting with you.
God, look it up.
Do you not know?
God.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I learned. Because I was always trying to seek not validation, but like confirmation that what I was choosing to do was right, when I already knew it was for me. Like at the time, for example, moving to Thailand, everyone was like, what the hell are you doing? And I remember I had like this great job. I was making such good money. The job was boring as hell, but the company was like really high, like well known. And I was like, I'm going to leave. And everyone was like, why? Why would you do that? Like, you have such a good job, like this and that. And I was like, I'm just going to go. And like at the time, you're obviously anxious, but I just knew like it was the right decision. And that's like with anything in my life. Like, I've always gotten outside opinions or advice, but I've always known what I was going to do regardless of what you say. So yeah, you're always right when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, follow what you're feeling.
100%. And if you have intuition, use it. I don't know. Do males have intuition? But well, females have it. But
do males? I don't think males have much. Wow. The science question of the day. The science question of the day. Do males have intuition?
Some would say they would.
I'll leave that to the listeners.
We'll leave that. Yeah,
I'll leave that to the listeners. Yeah. Hey guys, leave in the comments below. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I love that.
So, what's next for you?
Ooh.
Now you're out of this whole spiritual awakening thing.
It's really funny because back during that time, I was always so like hands-on with everything. Like, I guess you could say controlling in a sense. Like, obviously you're controlling, it's your life, but I was just very controlling in terms of what was going to happen. Now I'm kind of just flowing. But I am I'm building a brand, I guess you could say, which is fiveheadedlady. If you haven't, which you've obviously seen because it was on my matchmaker. So I'm starting that. And under that, I'm creating a few series, a few businesses as well. So that's kind of what's happening on my career front. That's next. I just want to take over the world pretty much. And also just keep working on myself, keep experiencing things, just living life as much as I can. I really just want to like live life. It's so cliche, but live life to the fullest. Like when I'm at that point where it's my time to go, I just want there to be nothing that I'm really leaving behind. Like I wish I did that. I just want to, yeah, be the best, do the best, have the best, live the best life for me. Whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Amazing. And where, if my listeners want to follow you and you achieving the best, being the best in the whole world, taking over the planet, where can they find you and your stuff?
So my personal Instagram, don't be alarmed. I don't have posts on there at the moment because I took everything out. I'm starting fresh. It's at Tyler Auld on Instagram as well as Facebook. Tyler Shalane Auld on Facebook. Don't really post on there, so just go to Instagram. Don't really post on Instagram. But Five-Headed Lady is the brand / business. And that's on pretty much everything: TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Yeah. That's where you can find me.
Sweet. I will put those links down below. Tyler, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great chat. I had fun.
Of course. And to all my listeners, I will see you guys next time.